We're shooting a documentary about car culture in the UK, and I need a second driver. You've made a name for yourself, and it would be great to have you aboard. It's simple. You drive, I tell the story. Let's do it. From Aston Martin to McLaren and Bentley, Great Britain is home to over a century of automotive excellence. I'm Rebecca Dawson. Welcome to British Racing Green, a documentary celebrating that history. The Aston Martin DB5 Vantage was the quintessential Grand Tourer of the 1960s, combining British engineering and Italian design. The Vantage featured side-draft carburetors and a refined camshaft profile. This car would form... The silver DB5 would be immortalized in half a century of cinema. The classic Aston Martin. But in 2016, a new DB was unveiled, heralding the dawn of Aston Martin's second century. The DB11 is the first production turbocharged Aston Martin. But is it a worthy successor to that legacy? The short answer is yes. It's bold, responsive, and agile. It's perhaps the best GT chassis in the world. And listen to it. The DB11 is... The short answer is yes. It's bold, responsive, and agile. It's perhaps the best GT chassis in the world. And listen to it. Able to hit 60 miles an hour in 3.5 seconds, the DB11's 5.2-litre twin-turbo V12 boasts a top speed of over 200 miles an hour. The DB11 is not the fastest car in the world, but then it's not trying to be. It's sophisticated, effortless luxury. It's an Aston Martin. Beautiful as they are, Aston Aston Martins are only one of many cars made in the United Kingdom. Let's see what else is out there. This is shaping up nicely. Time for a change of pace, though. At least at first. The next segment is about Land Rover, and we'll be starting out with the Type 3. Land Rover, the British sports utility vehicle. But before that, they were actual utility vehicles. Solid, tough trucks, unstoppable over almost any terrain. In 400 yards, turn left. The Land Rover Type 3 marks the point where that shift begins, and we'll be looking at what that meant. Recalculating route. Land Rovers have taken on almost every task imaginable. They've been generators, tractors and ambulances. They've brought peace and carried medicines to disaster zones. They've even been buses. In 400 yards, turn left. Yards, turn left. In 100 yards, turn sharp left. While the stock Type 3 would never be particularly fast uphill, there is almost no hill that it couldn't climb, or dam for that matter, if you put a proper winch on it. In 1978, a Series 3 was custom-built for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It only had 1,892 miles on the clock when it was auctioned into private hands. And it was in perfect condition. It would be. After all, she trained as a mechanic in the 1940s and will likely remain the only royal able to strip and rebuild an engine. Along with the Range Rover, others would follow. Discovery, Defender, and the Freelander. Each a more sophisticated and enjoyable utility vehicle. But none of them were a replacement for the Type 3. They were a different kind of car. The Type 3 was arguably the first sports utility vehicle, an evolution of the design that would lead ultimately to this. The Bowler Nemesis. An off-road racing vehicle that turned into a production SUV, the Nemesis EXR. It sports a turbocharged 5-litre Land Rover Jaguar engine, crammed into a carbon fibre chassis with integral roll cage. It even has the grille, headlights and rear lights from a Range Rover. And there are no compromises either. With a 0 to 60 time of an unreal 4.2 seconds, all-wheel drive, and the ability to corner near instantly, the Nemesis provides adrenaline and sheer terror in equal measure. This is an all... Hope you're enjoying yourself. I know I am. It's great to be able to just focus on telling the story while someone else handles the driving for once. Let's get to the next one. This time, it's Lotus. Lotus Engineering Limited began as many stories in British engineering do, in an old barn. The first Lotus cars were offered as kits. You built them yourself. From 1962, they began to actually build the cars themselves. The Elan Sprint showed exactly what they intended to do. In 400 yards, turn right. Turn right. Turn left. Widely hailed as one of the greatest sports cars of the 1960s, the Elan would be closely studied and emulated, inspiring such masterpieces as the Mazda MX-5. The Elan has all the energy, style, and enthusiasm you would expect. Bold, quick, and fun. So much so, touch the pedal, the Exige responds with instant, relentless acceleration, as you'd expect. With a 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds and a top speed of 170 before upgrades and tuning, the Exige is uncompromising. And there's no power steering, so you can really feel the road. A genuinely thrilling drive, and one that isn't afraid to demand you take it seriously. In 200 yards, turn left. Turn left. In 400 yards, you will arrive at your destination. And with rumoured launches of 2 new cars in 2020, Lotus looks set to push the benchmark of the experienced sports car well into the next century. On location, you'll see why when you get there. This was a car designed explicitly for rallying, with a powerful fuel-injected 1790cc Cotswolds BDE engine. Homologation rules required that all cars entered into the group be production, so Ford built 200 of them. The RS 1800 brought home 17 World Rally Championship victories for Ford. Fortunately, Ford built over 200 as part of the homologation requirements for Group B, so you can still find them, if you're lucky. In the world, a one-door microcar coupe, featuring a 42cc air-cooled engine, capable of a heinous 38 miles an hour, and a handle so you can pick it up and carry it with you when you get to work. And keep in mind that this is the production version. The prototype had the single wheel at the front. Why would you think that was a good idea? In 2010, though, production restarted at Sutton in Ashfield. So, if you'd like to own the modern incarnation of this, I suppose you can. Hey there! How about a car with some actual legroom and some actual speed? This section's about what happened when McLaren decided to make a road car. You're going to enjoy this. The track and the road have very different requirements. For McLaren, that was a challenge they were more than willing to embrace. In 1988, they set out to create the finest sports car the world has ever seen. By 1993, they had achieved their goal, and the honestly fantastic F1 was the result. 106 would be built across all variants, and it remains one of the very best road cars ever made.
It is safe to do so.
McLaren's racing heritage is so deeply ingrained in this machine that when they took it to Le Mans in 1995 and faced... Remember those problems with turbo lag? McLaren solved that with the hybrid drive. While the turbos build pressure, the electric motor drives the story of what we got up to in Colorado. There was this sleeper car competition, you see. Let's just say no one was ready for the sunbeam. Lotus never quite let go of the upgrade game. So in addition to building their own supercars, they upgraded cars from other marques too. The Lotus Carlton was one such aftermarket upgrade. Lotus took a respectable four-door Vauxhall saloon and turned it into a supercar. From the outside, there are a few signs that this is something special. Wider wheel arches, that sort of thing. But under the bonnet, that's where the magic starts. Engine capacity was increased to 3.6 litres, and twin Garrett T25 turbochargers were added.
At the roundabout, take the third exit.
The tyres were widened, and the tyre compound from the Lotus Esprit was used. To handle camber change issues, they put in the self-leveling suspension from the Opel Senator.
In 400 yards, you will arrive at your destination.
Only 950 of these custom gems were built, and they've become something of a modern classic. The Lotus Carlton was an example of how to turn a saloon into a supercar, but that's not the only thing Lotus got up to. In 1979, Chrysler approached Lotus to create a strict rally version of their Sunbeam three-door hatchback. Lotus, as you might imagine, rather enjoyed the challenge. They took the rear-wheel drive hatchback and changed everything that matters. They stiffened the suspension, improved the anti-roll bars, and widened the transmission tunnel. The Lotus Sunbeam was revealed to the public in 1979 in Geneva to widespread praise in the motoring media. It almost makes you wonder if Lotus should do more conversion. That's a silly question, actually. Lotus should do. I honestly think these might be some of the most beautiful cars in the world. And the story of how it came about is, well, really British. Get in the car and let's get this segment. Jaguar is a bit of a favourite of mine. The company is almost 100 years old and was originally founded to build sidecars for motorcycles. But this is the car that really set the bar, I think. The 1961 E-Type. When he saw it, Enzo Ferrari called it the most beautiful car in the world. High praise indeed.
Turn around when it is safe to do so. Recalculating route. In 400 yards, turn left. In 400 yards, turn right. Turn right. Turn around when it is safe to do so.
About 2,500 were built, and they're a common sight at auto shows, and surprisingly reasonably priced. All in all, an almost perfect Jaguar. The car's heritage is proudly displayed in the gorgeous D-type curves and the distinctive aero hunch behind the driving position. But like the E-Type, it's not just a pretty face. Powered by a 5-litre V8 supercharged engine. With a fully aluminium body, it's blisteringly fast, with a 0 to 60 speed of 3.8 seconds and a top speed of 186 miles an hour. A car as beautiful as this must surely have been a carefully authored design. Actually, it started as a sketch by designer César Pierre, thrown together one Friday in his free time. Jaguar's design director, Ian Callum, saw the sketch in a thumbnail on César's computer during a meeting and asked him what it was. The rest is history. "250 Project 7s were built, as both a successor to the E-Type and as a celebration of Jaguar's victories at Le Mans. I think I speak for all of us when I say, thank heavens for César's Friday afternoon doodle. We're almost done, but we've saved the good stuff for last. A spot of rallying in the most British car of them all. Get in, strap in, and let's nail this one. There is one car built in Great Britain that is, quite fairly, considered one of the most influential cars of the century. It's a surprisingly spacious little city car with a side-mounted engine. It's an icon of popular culture. It's been built on every continent where there's a car factory. It's the Mini. The Mini Cooper S was built to be a performance machine with deeper engines, twin carburetors and front disc brakes. This scrappy little machine, 5.3 million Minis would be sold, making it the most popular British car. And then in 2000, BMW resumed production of the Mini, breathing new life into the iconic mark. If the Mini of the 1960s had its sights set on the roads of Monte Carlo, the X-rayed Countryman has its eyes on something a little tougher. The deserts and rough terrain of the Dakar, for starters. A wit once said that the only thing Mini in this monster was the Dakar demands literally tons of gear. You could call it a tank. It does rather sound like one. When Mini's X-rayed division set out to build this thing, they had one goal in mind: winning the Dakar. Owners come and go. The heritage of a car like the Mini is more than who owns the keys to the shop. I fully expect to see Mini's wings flying for another century. This is quite the story. Bentley at Le Mans in the 1930s. Gentleman racers, heroic driving, and a personal hero of mine. Take good care of the cars, though. Both of them are mine. Bentley, a company founded in 1919 in Cricklewood, North London, and purchased by Rolls-Royce in the 30s. A company synonymous with both racing and luxury. Perhaps the best example I know of those two extremes of British engineering. For almost a century, every Bentley was hand-built to exacting standards. So at the beginning of the 21st century, when Bentley revealed their first mass-produced car, there were a great many questions. The car was the Continental GT, an elegant grand tourer that combined a racetrack pedigree with exquisite style and all the power you could need. The 2017 Continental Supersport is responsive, fast, and beautifully designed. It brings together all-wheel drive, carbon fiber bonnet sides and side skirts to create the most powerful, performance-focused car the company has ever built. 2007, a largely standard Continental Speed GT broke Bugatti's record for the flying kilometre on the 205 miles an hour, both ways, on ice. Even when building these gorgeous Grand Tourers, Bentley is driven to excellence. Today, Bentley means modern, peerless luxury and elegance. But that's far from the full story. A century ago, Bentley meant something else entirely. It meant Le Mans. In 1930, eccentric race team owner Dorothy Paget financed a rather special Bentley at the Le Mans. It was a 4.5-litre supercharged masterpiece, driven by Sir Henry Bentley Boy Birkin. It posted the fastest time on the day, but it failed to finish. But what a race it was. Sir Henry's courageous driving forced Rudolf Caracciolla's 7-litre Mercedes out of the race at the cost of his own victory. But in doing so, he handed the day to the Bentley Sixes, a gentleman racer indeed. Sir Henry knew he didn't have anything to prove. In 1929, the adventurer Mrs. Mary Victor Bruce had already driven the resolutely modern 4.5-litre Bentley at Montlhéry, setting distance, speed and endurance records. The Bentley's performance so annoyed Ettore Bugatti that he called it the world's fastest lorry. The blower had the last laugh, though. In 2012, it was sold at auction for over £4 million, which is more than enough to buy a Veyron and a racing truck.